Welcome everybody, and thank you for joining us today at Unknown Charlotte. We have the latest and greatest SteveMatchett here with us again, and I'm happy to be looking over this Ferrari 250 GT PininFarina with him.
This is a wonderful example of a 250 PininFarina, and I've always been attracted to the 250 range of cars from Maranello because it's a very evocative era in Maranello's history. You think of all the great 250 cars that came within that range, and also that very famous and very lucrative, successful relationship between Pininfarina and Ferrari. Can't say it was started with this car, but it was started in this era, so it's a very significant car to the history of Maranello.
Yeah, right. I mean, you can see this car has a good amount of history and a great provenance. This is the 39th Frankfurt Auto Show debut vehicle for Ferrari.
For the age of the car, the passenger actually has a lot of legroom inside here. We've got the seat pulled nearly all the way back, which make it very uncomfortable for the passengers in the back, but that's typical for Ferrari, let's face it. Always has been that way with the few cars they produce that are designed to have passengers in the back, but up in the front here it's very comfortable.
Yeah, I agree. And you can tell it was a GT car for all its design purposes here.
And how's the response on the throttle now we're up to temperature, the oil's right?
Let's go see what she does with this V12. Third comes quick.
And one of the great masterpieces, I would say, of the 250 range, and the clue is in the name, is the engine, the 250 Colombo engine. 250cc per cylinder. Of course, the customers are supposed to know that it was a V12 because that's the only way of working out the fact that it's a 3-litre engine.
Yeah, okay, right? Exactly. Because, you know, we do the displacement thing in cubic inches, and then it can be forever tiring. But yeah, there's so many variations of that Colombo engine. It can be very confusing if you don't know the cars, much like I didn't when I first started looking into these vehicles. There's so many ranges and so many little variations of them. Even the same 250 GT PininFarina in many years came with different ignition setups, carburetor setups, oil filtration systems. Right. So yeah, there's so many little nuances to that Colombo engine.
So you took that basic configuration. So in this case, it's a 250cc displacement per cylinder. And then if it was a 275, it was the same, 275. If it was a 330 GTC, it was 330cc per cylinder. And that went on for a number of years until finally they changed that numbering system, went on to something else. But I'll lift the bonnet for me if you would. I'm going to go around the other side. Let's have a look at this wonderful piece of artwork that Ferrari and Colombo produced together.
It goes without saying, Ferrari didn't care much to manufacture cars at this time. They are basically chassis and engine, and this is what they wanted to make sure the highlight of this vehicle was. Yeah. And in true statement, naturally aspirated, triple Weber, 7,000 RPM V12.
It sounds absolutely beautiful. All the 250 engines do, and fundamentally, in almost every way, this is the same engine that would power the legendary 250 GTO, which is valued in tens of millions of dollars on the very rare opportunity those cars ever come up for sale. But the architecture of the drivetrain, and most definitely of the engine itself, is almost identical. That was really the masterpiece from Colombo. And as you say, the engine went under many different iterations and developments throughout its life, but he had it absolutely nailed from the first day, really.
So as we get the carburetors warmed up and running better and the oil temperature goes up, the car starts getting better and better. Right. And there is no air-fuel ratio, there is no computer tuning any of this stuff. It's just happening in lifetime. I have a choke, I have to fine-tune it, you have to know what you're doing, and that's all there is to it. And this car has 4 speeds, and a fifth gear overdrive, so for highway driving, that's what we normally use. Thankfully, all of it is working perfectly, and these are the years before the gated shifters. You know, there are no guided clicking. In my research, I mean, every part that we've gotten, we take a long time to figure out what's going on, where it comes from. And in my research, I have found out there's so many carburetor variations, so many ignition coil variations, so many distributor variations, so many oil filtration variations. So if you know where to look, you can find the right stuff. But oddly enough, I mean, it's been trial by fire for us because this is 1959. There's no exact diagrams anywhere. all the technicians that are experts at this are either aging or in the UK somewhere. They're not in the US, so it's hard to find information, good information, and it's hard to have the resources to find the parts, both money and in time, because that's the old saying, time is money, right? So if I wait 2 weeks for jets, or if I wait 2 weeks and I get the wrong, I'm waiting a month to do a carburetor rebuild, which is the love of the cars. You know, we want to give them everything that they deserve to have and run as optimally as they can, but that comes with getting the right parts and having the right people working on it. So
there is no sound quite like that of a naturally aspirated engine, when you can hear the air being drawn into the chokes of the carbs. It's beautiful. It is simply mechanical music.
As a young guy, I feel extremely lucky to even be able to experience anything like this. So I'm blessed every day that I get the opportunity to make this right and showcase it to folks like you out there, and you, Steve. You're certainly no stranger to this, so I'm just glad to be living some of my highlights with you guys.
Well, I appreciate you taking me for a drive in this wonderful car. And again, there's just something about all the aromas from inside a car are very special, but also the sound of the car, the mechanics of the car, all have their own individual sounds, and when they come together, I mean, it sounds somewhat pretentious to say, but it really is kind of a mechanical symphony. When it all works at the same time, it's a beautiful thing.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
It's easy to be intoxicated by this.
Truly.
It's been a great journey, and I've enjoyed all the nerding out that you have to know about parts and schematics alongside with my technicians to get here, but you know, that's part of the journey.
It is part of the journey, and a lot of that stems from the fact that when we think about Ferrari's racing heritage, the cars back, this is a road car of course, but the race car to begin with was in a permanent state of flux. The car was being changed not just from race to race or session to session. Sometimes you talked about carburetor jets, they could be changing the jets in session.
In session, yeah.
Formula One does the same thing now in a different way. We're not changing carburetor jets, but a Formula One car is in a constant state of flux. Suspensions are being changed, brakes are being changed, transmissions are being changed all the while. So you're right. But of course, nowadays, all those records are kept digitally. They're on file and very easy to find. But when you're going back to Maranello's products of the 50s, very difficult to pinpoint exactly what was what when it was being used. And that's where the history is so important. And a lot of that comes from photographs, right? How many times do you have to look through photographs of the car and say, I can see what carburetors they had on it now. Now we know what we're looking for.
Right, I'm glad you mentioned that point. That reminded me, I've gone through auctions of this car through the 80s and through now, and you can see how the cars throughout its life have either been upgraded or just kept running as best as they could. And sometimes you can't find that carburetor again. So you got to get, if you can source a rebuilt one that's cost as godly as it can be, you just get another one that is like it and hope for the best and keep it going. So different cars have different stories. The fact that we have an all-together, one piece, one running vehicle, all in one piece is what I'm trying to say. Yep. If we have a great example that runs, drives, and looks as great as this, with the history that it does, that's the reward that I get to feel like when I'm driving the car, when I'm taking care of it. Because I know ultimately it's not us that take the vehicle and keep it forever. It's on to the next owner who's gonna take care of it and curate it so they can enjoy it and pass it along through time.
You just said curator. Do you feel a bit like a curator of the car when you have it for a period of time?
Yes, after 2 years of not having this being able to run and driving it, I've put 57 kilometers on it because I'm in love with it. And every time you drive it, it gets better. And it's, for me, I feel like a car is saying, oh, thank you for the exercise. Let's keep going. Can you keep going? I haven't been worked out this long in such a long time. Let's keep going. It wants to be driven. Yeah. Mechanical things want to be kept moving. The blood flow of this thing is the oil, the coolant, all the fluids that are in the drivetrain. That's kind of what excites me. And I know someone will enjoy it as much as I will if they get to feel the passion for it that I have. You know, if I'm excited about all the man hours and all the hands-on time I've had with it, I'm sure somebody else is going to appreciate that. And that's how this car has landed here. This didn't get here by luck. A lot of owners propped it up to get to us to here today.
Yeah. Well, it's a beautiful example of a 250 GT PininFarina. Thank you very much.
Thank you
showing me the car.
Joining me with this.
I love it, and I love the stories that you've got to go along with it. Thanks very much.
My pleasure.